if I'm constantly saying to myself that I'm going to do something and then I never do it, then what I'm kind of teaching myself is that I'm unreliable, that I can't even trust myself.
Welcome to the Iron Mindset Podcast, a podcast focused on discipline and strategy for women scaling lifestyle-led businesses. I'm Valentina, your host, a serial entrepreneur with almost 2 decades of business and marketing experience. And we're all here because we're in the business of number one. In today's episode, I'm talking to CiCi Regan. CiCi is a 9+ years sober published poet and lifelong word who turned the dream of writing into a career helping entrepreneurs and personal brands uncover the golden thread in their own stories. She's been featured in Newsweek, Metro, the BBC, and over 30 podcasts to share her story of resilience and compassion and to encourage others to use their words and voices to create a better world for all of us. Now, in today's episode, we talk about how discipline is actually self-trust and what to do on the days when you don't feel motivated, and why strategy is non-negotiable if you want to scale sustainably, and how to build a lifestyle-led business that supports your life instead of burning you out. Before we dive in, just grab a cup of coffee and get comfortable and enjoy this honest conversation about business, growth, discipline, strategy, and building a business that fits your life. Hi, CiCi. Thank you for being on this podcast. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, I work with personal brands to find their words. I feel like everything is communication. Like everything is words and everything is how we're understood and how we see ourselves and how we communicate with others. And that's where all these like little disconnections happen. And as a recovering alcoholic and with all these different life experiences, I can kind of see what people are trying to get at and help them like pull that out of themselves. That's what I really love about the work that I do.
Now, we are here and I wanted you to be a guest on this podcast for several reasons. First of all, because we've been working together for some time and I've noticed your growth. And two of the topics that we're going to discuss in this podcast all the time are going to be discipline and strategy. And something else we're going to discuss is scaling lifestyle-led businesses, especially for women. And you have been in business for a very long time. This is not your first business, being a copywriter. You've had businesses before. So tell us a bit, how did you start your businesses, your first business, and when, why?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I started my first business in financial services when I moved here to the UK. I think it was maybe like 2017, 2018. I'm a word person, not a numbers person. Dates are not my thing, but something like that. I didn't really know anybody in the country except for my husband at the time, my ex-husband. And I just threw myself into it. I took a course on estate planning. I really loved it. And I went to networking meetings around locally here in Newcastle, where I live. And yeah, I just sort of grew it on a one-to-one basis. And then obviously 2020 happened and I could not go out and do that stuff anymore. So I switched more to online. I worked with an online business mentor, a few different ones. I took the digital marketing course, a bunch of different things to kind of like pivot, as everybody was saying, and do more online things, and was doing wills and trusts and lasting powers of attorney, traditionally really boring work, but I infused myself into it. And that's really what I learned, was that when I was tucking my septum ring up and covering up my tattoos and everything to go to networking meetings and pretending to be this like professional business lady, I was overlooked in a way because I was kind of like hiding who I was. There was like an energetic disconnect. And as soon as I started calling it death admin And I ran buy one, get one free will things for Black Friday, and for Valentine's Day, I would run promotions called Till Death Do Us Part and stuff like that. Like I was having a good time with it. And because of that, I worked with incredible, fun clients who also enjoyed this kind of take on it. Still compassionate, still professional, but like, why does everything have to be so damn serious all the time? So that's kind of how I got started in that. When the pandemic, as I was learning all this marketing stuff, I was stuck inside a little bit bored. And because it was finance, I was like a little bit, I had this like desire to do this more creative thing. It wasn't quite scratching the itch. So I started an online community for fellow survivors of addiction, abuse, and trauma to heal through writing. And I just taught creative writing and things like that as a tool for healing, journaling, self expression, all kinds of things. And it was absolutely incredible. I did that for a year, but it was kind of heavy. I was going through my divorce around that time, around the year mark. So I felt very happy with what I accomplished, wound that down. I was well known by that point in the online business space, in the local space, but also people really liked my content. I would always get compliments on things that I posted. And because I was so vulnerable, talking about my own experience with domestic abuse, addiction, all that stuff, people really kind of connected with me. So I just decided on a whim to offer some copywriting services. And that was a few years ago. By the end of that week, I had my first 4 recurring clients, and it just absolutely skyrocketed from there. It's been, yeah, amazing. And now it's been a few years doing that, and it has really become its own thing. I feel like I've just been hanging on for dear life, and I've used everything that I've learned along the way. So I'm really glad for the experience.
That's amazing. And I really like the fact that you went from like having in-person, like brick and mortar businesses to online businesses. So you've adapted. This is a really important quality for any business owner. Now, I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I've prepared and that are directly related to this podcast and what we want to talk about. So you've been through 2 businesses, you've grown them, and one of the things that we have to do in order to grow our businesses, besides, being passionate about the topic, is having discipline. So what do you understand by discipline in business, first of all, and then how do you apply it to your everyday life in business?
Sure. I mean, I find that it's kind of a constant balance because there is a bit of a give and take. You know what I mean? There's a difference between pushing yourself and then pushing yourself too much and burning out. But discipline is a commitment to yourself. I see it as like a trust exercise within myself, because if I'm constantly saying to myself that I'm going to do something and then I never do it, then what I'm kind of teaching myself is that I'm unreliable, that I can't even trust myself to do what I say I'm going to do to myself. It's just not, it's really, I think it's really bad for your mental health, and other things. It can be really detrimental for all relationships, I think. So that's how I understand it. And so I try to be realistic because I don't want to overpromise anything to myself. But at the same time, I like to make commitments. I make a schedule of what I'm going to do, and I do those things that day. If I don't, then I have to move things and I have to look at what's actually going on. I'm not just like sitting and winging it. I think that's part of the thing. I started in financial services, so I'm organized. I know I know what's going on. I'm tracking my internal projects, my external projects, like my KP, like, you know what I mean? I kind of have a finger on the pulse of what's going on. And that's really important, especially because I have a team as well, to kind of like be streamlined enough to know what's going on. But that's how I understand it and experience it. It's more, discipline is it's like part of your character.
Hmm. Well, I've noticed that although we know this, not everyone applies it, and we kind of wait for some kind of motivation to fall down from the sky. And motivation, well, it happens, and then after sometimes you get demotivated. I know, like every person, you must have days where you don't feel like doing the things that you have to do. How do you deal with that? Do you just leave them for another day, replan, or do you just do them because, well, you have to do them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And honestly, it depends. Like, so because life happens, life happens, but then if you're self-employed and you sort of have to find that balance, and that's where strategies and recurring income and all that stuff is important. That's separate. But I just sort of analyze it almost on a case by case basis. So, for example, I lost my recovery sponsor earlier in the year, and that was so difficult. So I knew I needed to take time away, but obviously you can't just put the brakes on everything. Here's the thing is like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saving lives. Like nothing horrible is going to happen if I push back a deadline for 2 weeks. But if I try to work through a traumatic event, then that will have ongoing effects. So for something like that, that I don't want to stop because my nature is to push through and to just distract myself. So for something like that, I will say, okay, I need to pause. I need to give myself this time and just sit in this, let it pass through me. And then I'll be not over it, but better on the other side of that for having paused. I also have like chronic pain and fatigue. I have fibromyalgia. So sometimes my brain is just like not braining. And if I just have writing to do and I can't write, then I'll try to do something else that day. Maybe I can do some design work. Maybe I can do something else and move stuff around. And if I'm just feeling like maybe a little bit low, if I'm having trouble with like depression or feeling really anxious, then I will maybe pull on some other tools. Like I'll do my somatic yoga, maybe take my dog for a walk. And then if I still don't feel better, then I've done my best and I can lay down or do whatever I want to do. Chances are I probably will feel better and I can sit down and I'll commit to working for an hour. And then if I do more than that, great, I probably will at that point. And if I don't, fine. I've kept my commitment to myself to do at least an hour. And now I can, lay down, chill, do whatever I want to do. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Hey, sorry for interrupting this podcast episode. I know it's really interesting, but there's something I really need to tell you. Have you joined our YouTube community? That's where we share teachings behind the scenes of our businesses and where all the podcast guests are. So underneath this video, if you're watching us on YouTube, there is a button to join our YouTube community. Come and say hi, tell us about your business, ask your questions. All the teachings that I provide are free for all my YouTube followers and in this YouTube community. Hope to see you inside. And now let's go back to the episode. Yep. So this is also leading us into our next topic, which is strategy. What do you understand by strategy in business, or, when we deal with marketing, for example, with sales, because you do this a lot for your clients also. And how do you apply that? What's your business strategy, let's say? And this is also going to lead us into the last question that's connected to the main topics of this podcast, which is going to be the lifestyle-led business model. And, because they are actually together. They're not one without the other. The fact that you have discipline, but on some days you can just relax and take time off, is because you have the strategies in order to build a business which allows you to have a life. So they're kind of connected, but I tried to take them one by one. So when it comes to strategy in business, what do you understand by that?
Strategies are like the support beams. You know what I mean? That's like your structural, how things actually play out in your business, how you sell things. Almost like if discipline is the internal commitment, then strategy is almost the external one. It's like, okay, I have made this commitment to myself to do this thing. As a result of that, I will implement this strategy. And I think the most important part of strategy that people don't necessarily consider as much is commitment and consistency, and really kind of putting your all into things and doing the best that you can with whatever
Yeah.
strategy, like not cutting corners and skipping, because at the end of the day, then that affects the data. So if you do this launch, but you didn't have your heart in it, and you didn't show up on your stories like you were supposed to, and you're supposed to record videos, but you didn't, and you only posted like half the time that you said you were going to, and all this and that, then maybe a couple people bought whatever thing or whatever, but how much information do you really have to rinse and repeat that next time? You don't really know what worked and what didn't. You don't really know what resonated and what didn't, because you didn't really try. And I think people are maybe afraid to fail and then fail better and then fail better again. Like,
Yeah, and
and
learn
that's
and
part
grow.
of it. Yeah.
I think I'm in many communities, and I've seen that when people decide nowadays to open businesses, especially with the online business, because when you used to have like an in-person business, a brick and mortar business, there were more things that you had to do before. So it kind of got you ready for what's to come. But I feel that in the online space, people are just, one day waking up thinking, I'm going to create a course or I'm going to sell something. And they think that is business with no strategy behind, and not thinking that if you really want to not just make some money from this, but actually live your life, you do need strategy behind. So that's what I find very, very interesting. Now, let's move on to the topic of a lifestyle-led business. You are a woman, you also have a life. How do you put those things together, like having a life, living, enjoying yourself, you're young, and having a business which you need to show up for regularly, constantly, to
Mhm.
commit and to be consistent?
Yes. Well, I will say in the beginning, it was pretty imbalanced. It was more business than life. I don't know if that's 100% necessary, but I think depending on what your goals are and how committed you are to growth and how soon and all the things involved in that, sometimes it is a little bit more grindy and time consuming at the beginning. These days, I have a lot more life in my life, and I do prioritize myself. I think partially that's something that I learned in addiction recovery as well. Like, you have to put your recovery first, look after yourself first, or everything else comes last. That's the thing that people say. And I've found that to be pretty accurate, to be honest. Because if you don't have that sort of foundational thing, then any sort of passing wind can blow you right over. And you need to have this sort of like stoicism, because you have to be okay with failing or whatever, and not going the way you want it. There's negative connotations to the word failure. I don't necessarily identify with those. It's just
Yeah.
it's a learning opportunity and everything like that. But yeah, I think you just have to be comfortable with yourself enough that what comes along isn't gonna blow you fully off course. And in order to do that, you have to prioritize yourself. So I have like my little self-care things that I do. I have a life coach that I work with, that I meet with every couple of weeks. I've worked with nutritionists. I've done a lot of spiritual programs. I am involved with my recovery family. I see my partner and his family. I spend time with my dog, like all the things that make me feel good. And anything that feels bad or that only takes away from me, it like doesn't get prioritized. And then work comes after that. But then I also prioritize work. I call it like a filtering process, or you sort of, with your messaging, that you attract the right people and repel the wrong people. The same thing I do with my clients and try to do
Yeah.
for myself. What I did with the death admin and financial services, it's the same sort of thing. So I don't have to spend energy on people and things and stuff that doesn't light me up. And also because I'm so organized, because I've always had like a sort of like CRM or whatever sort of system in place to track things. I've always been able to onboard staff really easily and keep track of what's going on. I have standard operating procedures and checklists. So it's all pretty self-explanatory and straightforward, and I kind of always know what I'm doing. So that saves a lot of time, just sort of like, la la la, what am I going to do today, faffing around and forgetting stuff. Like that doesn't happen.
Yep. Because you've been in business for a very long time and you've been in different niches, what are one, two, three lessons that you'd like to share with us? Business lessons, things you've learned that helped you grow and have this strong business today.
Well, thank you, and what a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that I feel that people are doing business backwards in a way. I feel that people lead with the we've all seen it, the ideal client avatar.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. And yeah, who you're going to sell your stuff to is obviously important. Without that, you have no business. But we're talking about strategy, discipline. We're talking about like commitments to yourself. It has to start with what you want. You know, the strategy is this support network. It's building up to what is your goal? What is your thing that you're trying to achieve? How much money do you want to make? How much do you actually want to work? Are you trying to travel? Are you trying to fly first class? Do you want to be like a multimillionaire, or are you happy like being just under the VAT threshold every year?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do you actually want? And then build towards that. Okay, this is the goal that I want to achieve. What would the business structure need to be like in order to achieve that? Okay, who would want to buy this thing? You know, and so to put yourself first. So I think that's the main thing. So you're not building in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
A lot of people build themselves a prison rather than a business. When we're talking about lifestyle,
Yes, yes, yes. You know, actually, I was talking to someone recently. We talked about the fact that she already has a business and she sells courses. She's a coach. And she was like, I'm sad I haven't organized my business when I started it as you have it. And I was like, I haven't started my business like this. I didn't take 1 week of a month every month. Yeah, every month. Even if you can't start in a certain way, you need to think about where you want to go and how things should change in time in order to get to that lifestyle-led business or whatever you want to achieve. I was also talking to a client recently. She's starting a new business. She's in fencing. She teaches fencing and she has a club. She's opened her own club. And the first thing that we need to think, and I always tell my clients, is like, think about how much you want to work, when you want to work, how you want to work, who you want to work. In the beginning, I know we accept like all the clients because we need the money and we also need the experience and the testimonials. But where is this going to lead? So as you said, many people nowadays just think about, ideal client or dream client, maybe what offer I'm going to put out there, but there is nothing besides that. It doesn't lead anywhere. It's just, okay, this is not having a business. This is just having a hobby you can get paid for, but yeah, it's something you're doing for fun.
right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point, that just because you start off a certain way, like I started off with mostly done for you one-to-one. And I did that for a long time and I was absolutely snowed under. And then I had to restructure things a little bit. Sometimes that's how it starts. There's things that people will buy easily that you
Yeah.
can sort of like, and that's what takes off. So that's fine. But then kind of knowing what you're aiming for and what changes to make in the future is really helpful. And I think along that same lines is choose the strategy that feels right for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, especially because I work with a lot of like fellow neurodivergent people, you have this sort of like dopamine hit, and people are so good at marketing and thinking that you need a thing. It's like, oh, I need this new WhatsApp automation thing. I need this new like Facebook automatic friend adder thing. I need this new AI twin terrifying thing.
Yeah.
I need this, whatever. And it's like, yes, okay, but what do you want? Like, how do you want to show up? If you don't like doing like huge launches or having communities, then don't do a 5-day challenge model. If you feel like messaging people and
Yeah.
sending like multiple
Spammy.
emails and
Yeah.
messagings feels like spam, then don't do that. Like you don't have to do anything any certain way. So that's two things, but I guess they're kind of variations on the theme.
Yep. Sometimes it's also impossible. A few years ago, when I had a business coach, he, and I have no problem with he, but he used to say, you need to be in the 5 a.m. club. Like, wake up at 5, journal, meditate, go to the gym. And my daughter was 1 or 2. So, it's impossible for some of us, and we might hear advice from other people and think, if I don't do this, then I won't succeed. No, you will succeed. You are going to succeed in your own way. You just need to do what feels good for you, aligned. So at the end of the day, if, for example, I had to only work between 9 and 3 at one point because Rebecca was at school, I had to make breakfast, go and pick her up. That's what I'm going to have to deal with, and I'm going to organize the business around that. I'm not going to cry and say I'll never make it because, well, I don't wake up at 5.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that fully. And I am never going to be the type to wake up at 5 a.m. But sometimes I work the evenings.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I love to like lay in the bed sometimes and do a bit of writing for a client or some like social posts or something like that at 9 o'clock at night. I have my like creative bursts at that time. I think that's exactly it. There's no right way. There are foundational principles of business. There's sales psychology. There's like funnel structure. There are launch types. You know what I mean? There are basic sort of like pillars and things to look to. I'm not saying reinvent the wheel, but as long as you are building off of those foundational principles, then you can choose any sort of path that you want, which sometimes is even more terrifying for people. They're like, no, no, just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But only you can know. If you look for the answer to that question externally, you're probably going to get led down the garden path. Like you need to choose what you want first and then make decisions based on that. Don't let other people tell you what you need.
Yep. So you started this business more or less online during COVID. Now, people used to be quite a lot in the house at that moment and online and in communities. Now people want to get out of the house. They want to connect with others in person. How has your business changed in the last 1, 2, 3 years after the pandemic?
Well, I have run events like kind of interspersed throughout things. So, especially with my financial services business, I used to run my own networking events in conjunction with a charity. So I would meet a lot of like charity reps when I was out networking and stuff. If we hit it off or whatever, then we would do events together. So I did a few of them before the pandemic. I maybe would get, like 30, 40, 50 people sometimes. And a couple hundred together for each charity each time, which was cool. And then after the pandemic, when things started to open up, I did a couple more. I ended up doing a bigger one locally before I wound things down with the financial services business that I think we got over 100 people there at that networking meeting. So that was really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. And since then, I have, like, in the last couple of years, prioritized like retreats, and I've done like a larger convention and stuff that's up here in the north. I've enjoyed the retreats because I feel like you get to spend more time with people. You really get to know each other and kind of build relationships with each other. You've seen each other over the breakfast table every morning and crying and doing Tai Chi and all sorts of different things. It's a real bonding experience, and it's helpful for my business, of course, like for my own self, but also it's great to see friends and build relationships. I always get work with several of the people who are there at some point, if not immediately, then at some point. And so I've been, I think, prioritizing that kind of thing a little bit more. And I don't know if I love the conventions and stuff as much. I just find them really overwhelming for my own taste. And you don't really get the opportunity to build the relationships and connections. But I am looking to kind of go back and do some more of the one-off networking meetings around here again. I just found for a while that I was seeing kind of all the same people. There wasn't like maybe loads of diversity in all the rooms and stuff. So I'm interested in like exploring some different ones and getting back out there a little bit, and probably doing my own. People have loved doing the VIP days. An in-person kind of luxury thing is really cool. So there's all kinds of different things probably in the pipeline. Maybe I'll do my own retreat one day.
That would be nice. Yeah. I would like that. Now, in order to get to the level of business you are at now, you've had to show your expertise and your authority. How do you show your expertise and authority in your copywriting, in your marketing, in your presence, overall presence, and what would you advise others to do?
Okay, well, I mean, it's a process. I think the first thing is that I am this person everywhere. So, like this person that's talking to you now, I am the same on other podcasts, on stages, on workshops that I deliver in person. I no longer feel that I have to make myself look a certain way for people to perceive me a certain way. I just sort of am myself. And that means also when people have heard me speak once or twice, then when they read my words, they can hear my voice in their head. And that's cool because it means I live rent free in their brains and they can hear stuff in my voice. So I think that's really important, and think that's a level of like authority that people don't necessarily always consider. If your brand is this space that you own in other people's minds, what does that mean? If that means that your voice is one of the things that lives in there, that's great. And it also means that a great filter when it comes to this stuff is could another person in my niche, another professional, say the same thing and it still be true? And if the answer is yes, then it's not you enough.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about niching and this kind of stuff. Is like when people say you are the niche, this is what they mean. Like, you know, it comes from you. And then I think another thing that's important is storytelling. How are you different? And showcasing that through storytelling. So not like I'm the only blah 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 who blah blah blah. Like instead of like, you know, what's a client transformation? How did they come to you? How were they feeling when they came to you? What was the trigger point that made them take action? And then what was the process that you took them through? What is the result of that as far as like how they feel now, or any other like tangible results, more money or improve relationships, reconciliation with an estranged partner? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Everybody does different stuff, but showcasing that differentiation in a story so that people can actually remember and hang on to it, because nobody is going to remember your little bullet point thing, but people remember stories because storytelling is the oldest form of human communication. That's how we knew when to plant things and who your granddaddy was and everything like that. We didn't have the written word yet.
Yeah.
And there were humans around for millennia. So storytelling is literally in our bones and it's in our DNA. So I think those are really important ways that you can showcase your authority, literally just telling stories about the way that you do things with clients and sounding consistent. Don't pretend to be somebody else on your Instagram stories and then you sound a little bit like this over here and you sound a little bit like this over here. Don't twist yourself into a brand archetype. Just be who you are when you sit down and have coffee with somebody. Just chill, you know?
Yep. I was actually working with a client once, and because she's not a native speaker of English, she had a problem of doing this in writing. So what I told her was just to record herself talking on different topics or just explaining different sessions with clients, and then just take that and put it down, write it down. In that way, that's you expressing yourself the way you talk about stuff with your own personality and not trying to come up with something in writing that would be polished and professional, but not you. And then things took off very well, because I know this with storytelling, to be honest. Every time I hear like storytelling, the word, I think many people don't really understand what that is. They feel like, just structures and I should talk in a certain way. It's not necessarily that too, but not necessarily that. It's just talking about you in the way you would talk to a friend. So tell us a bit about your work right now. And we are more or less close to Black Friday. And as a copywriter, this is a very important event for you, time of the year. What are some of the offers that you have, and what are you promoting at present?
Well, thank you so much for asking. Well, I'm doing my pre-Black Friday thing now, basically helping people get together their offer, the right type of offer for Black Friday, the messaging, and then the promotional strategy together. So that's pretty cool. I've done it before, like when I first started my copywriting business, and it was quite successful and people got great results from it, but I haven't done it in a couple of years. I've just been doing it with my one-to-one clients. So I'm excited to roll that out again. In general, I do a lot of project work, like larger projects, like wanting to rebrand or wanting to launch another facet of the business, like membership, or wanting to add in more passive stuff. I love to do big funnel refinements and things like that. That's the kind of big, juicy, strategic stuff. So it's the words, and it's taking you along the path to what you want and connecting you to the right people. It's all the things that. I love that, as you can probably tell when I talk about it. It lights me up. I love that. But I'm working on some other things behind the scenes as well that will probably come out in 2026. Some deeper work into messaging and self-expression, liberation of your voice, that kind of thing. Sometimes you can get a little blown off course or not always sound like yourself because you don't always know exactly what that is. So some work to help you put your finger on that and then express it to the world, but through a branding and business lens. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah.
It sounds amazing. I can hardly wait for that. So I know we've talked about offering a gift to our listeners and people watching us. What is your gift for them?
So I would love to offer you my instant sales post 5-minute formula. It's really great when we're talking about messaging and getting yourself across and all this stuff. Obviously, the bottom line is sales. How do you express that in a way that makes people want to buy the thing? And a lot of times people find it difficult. We're talking about you need to be vulnerable and connect emotionally and tell your story, but you also need to have a call to action, and that feels sticky, like the point of you're telling the story and then it's and do you want to buy my thing? That can feel kind of weird for people. So this solves that problem. It's a 20-minute video training and a little PDF formula that kind of breaks down how to create a big boy call to action that then you can use bits and pieces of and instantly stick on any other piece of content and turn it into a sales post for your thing like that. So people call it life-changing.
My last question is, where can people find you? How can they get in contact with you?
You can go to 𝐂𝐢𝐂𝐢 or you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn at 𝐂𝐢𝐂𝐢 everywhere.
Good. So thank you for being here today, CiCi, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for being here and listening to this conversation. I hope this episode gave you a new way of thinking about business, discipline as self-trust, strategy as support, and growth as something that's meant to feel aligned, not exhausting. If this resonated with you, come and join our YouTube community. That's where I share free teachings and behind the scenes insights, and where all my podcast guests join us too. Follow along there, connect with us, and learn the strategies that help you build a business that actually supports your life. See you inside.